Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 2:02. We have a quorum of the committee, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the February 6th. Today is the 6th. Good day. I didn't see you over there. How are you? The February 6th Audit and Finance meeting. And go ahead and get it started. Let me get into board docs so we can begin. All right. So call to order. Can we get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
A motion and second.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Now we're going to move forward to the approval of the January 3rd, 2024 Audit and Finance minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Motion approved.
We have a motion and a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we're going to move on to 2A, our procurement update. And I believe that will be presented by Ms. Carla.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. We have David Roberts and Kate Russell from Malden and Jenkins that will be presenting the procurement department transformation update.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is David Roberts with Malden and Jenkins, and we're going to start by giving you an update on the transformation effort that we've been working on with the procurement department. And is there a slide sorter? If we jump to the table of contents, please. That's okay. Excellent. Thank you. All right, so really just what we want to go over is three things. One, we want to talk about the transition support that we've been working on and certainly working with the new procurement director. It started in late September. We want to talk about the collaborative goal establishment efforts that have been going on within the department. And then we'll dive into individual goal updates that Kate will lead and talk about next steps as well. And so for the transition support, what we've been continuing to do is, we first assisted with the hiring process. So we reviewed the job description, provided some insight there, helped with questions and sat in on the interviews. We assisted in developing the 90-day transition plan. And this is, just to be clear, this was very specific and targeted to not only the new procurement director, but also CCSD's procurement department. So we're off and running on that. Once the new procurement department director came on, we spent a lot of time.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 2:02. We have a quorum of the committee, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the February.
I hate hearing my voice.
6th. Today is the 6th. Good day. I didn't see you. How are you?
Hey,
On the
Steve,
February
close out this,
6th, Audit and
close out the
Finance
YouTube.
meeting. And go ahead and get it started. Let me get into board docs so we can begin. Yep, that's the YouTube. I hate hearing my voice.
Over again.
Glitch in the matrix.
Oh, word.
And certainly, we've been collaborating
Right.
with the new procurement
So call to
director.
order. Can we get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Close out the motion and second. Yep, right there.
Second.
Yep, we have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye. At least I'm pretty. Exactly. Exactly. All right, we can move forward. Thank you.
The last bullet there relates to the establishment of the goals and initiatives, and they really consist of 4 main categories and 32 different initiatives. Looking on slide 3, going over the four main categories. One is process documentation and standardization, which dives into the MBE utilization plan, formalizing the processes and procedures manual, and also updates to the P-card manual. The next key goal area is related to enhanced communication and stakeholder awareness, working on updating the intranet, so having more accessibility and resources for end users, working on external training programs, as well as dashboard reporting. The third category area relates to technology, currently working with updating software the contract software, record digitization, and certainly automating certain processes that have been manual in the past. And lastly, but certainly not least, department culture and staffing, working on the internal training plan and the staffing plan. And on slide 4, this is a model that I've spoken about before. Really, it's a continuum for the procurement function itself. The first stage is compliance. The second stage is efficiency and effectiveness. And the third is really being a strategic partner. When we first started work, going back to the 5230 audit, I think the district was certainly, on the left end, more of the infancy side of the. Right now, it's moved almost to the other side. And so what I mean by that is certainly we have established policies and procedures that are there. You're focused on compliance and you're generally meeting that. And then over the next 6 months, as these goals come to fruition, the function itself will move into efficiency and effectiveness. And then from there, you have stability, you have your processes, and then you really reach your end stakeholders, and you can really start to be that proactive strategic partner. So we're seeing certainly a lot of great movement there. Now Kate's going to give an individual update on some of the specific goals and next steps.
Yeah, so thank you. My name is Kate Russell, Director with Malden and Jenkins. Have been doing some of the day-to-day on the ground with the procurement department here at CCSD. Wanted to highlight some of the specific activities that we've been able to accomplish in collaboration with the procurement department today, and kind of where we'll be focusing our efforts in collaboration with the team over the coming weeks and months. So on the next slide, it's process documentation and standardization. And I think this is where we had really started with the department about a year ago, crafting those initial SOPs. And now we want to think about how do we take all of those individualized SOPs and think about larger process manuals, larger standardization, more of that consistency. And so we do have a draft internal processes and procedures manual we're working with the department on to kind of enhance and get to a ready to publish state. We're thinking about how do we standardize templates and forms and things that end users may interact with, as well as vendors and other external stakeholders, so that there's consistency in vision and branding and information awareness for all those different groups. We've also started thinking about contract templates. I think the district does a lot of work with a lot of different types of contracts. So how do we standardize that? How do they look the same regardless of which end user department may be interacting with that vendor, and making sure that there's that consistency and awareness across the district. And that's really what we'll be working on over the coming weeks, is finalizing these draft documents, getting them ready to publish, both for internal users as well as external stakeholders and users where relevant, and making sure we've got that standardization of brand and look and feel, and matching with the larger district's brand and look and feel, so it feels cohesive and intentional. On the next slide is technology, and I think this is really the big foundational piece of where we are going to focus our time over the next few weeks. As ANF is aware, there are a lot of manual processes, manual documents, things being moved through the district and through the procurement department. We really want to be intentional on thinking about the software and the technology that creates that visibility, that creates that transparency, and creates that consistent repository for documents like contracts and solicitation, bid, things like that. So we've started doing demos and learning what your current software can provide, what's available within that system. I do want to give a big kudos to the business intelligence and information management team. They have been fantastic partners in getting that ready for the team to be able to look at and to understand what's currently capable and where there are those gaps. So we'll spend the next few weeks really doing that formal demonstration with external vendors, thinking about requirements gathering to make sure it's the right fit to get everything that the district needs from these different systems for e-procurement, for vendor management, for contract management, and things like that. So that's really been the big thing here, and thinking about how do we leverage existing systems and existing capabilities within the district to create automation, to create efficiencies, and to think about what that can look like for the future as well. So on the next slide, it's enhanced communication and stakeholder awareness. And this is thinking about how are you proactive in talking to end users and other departments, in talking to external stakeholders and vendor groups who are interested in doing business with the district. One of the things we've crafted over the last few months is a vendor guide, kind of a general how-to of if there's a vendor who wants to do business with the district, where can they find bids? What types of documents may they have to provide in order to be considered for a bid, things like that. And as we work on the technology piece, we'll integrate some of that technology update into those documents to make sure that all the interested vendor groups have access and understand what's necessary, where to register, things like that. We started looking at the capabilities of Munis, which is the current financial management system and procurement management system in the district, to create dashboards and to be able to pull metrics out of that system to provide visibility and transparent reporting to you, to citizens, to parents, to whomever may want to see some of this, to create that proactive on-demand visibility of metrics versus a reactive model. So we've been testing some of that, and we'll continue to test that over the coming weeks as we also learn about what system we may use for contract management and other things moving forward. And then we've been thinking about current training opportunities for end users who interact with procurement, either through P-card, through requisitions, through solicitations, things like that. How are we providing them with information about how best to interact with procurement to ensure that consistent, streamlined process, that they understand what's necessary for them to bring to the table to have a collaborative working relationship. So we're working on creating that formal training program. If you're a new bookkeeper in a school and you need to interact with procurement on a P card or with a requisition, what do you need to do? Do we have kind of job aids and quick resource guides so you know what you need to put in the system to ensure you're efficiently and effectively getting information in the system to get your dollars spent, to get your goods and services back to your school or your department? And then we're thinking about what other formats do we need to create for those? Is it a recorded webinar so that those end users can on demand walk through that with someone from procurement clicking along with them? Is it a step-by-step guide? Is it a quick resource checklist? So we're working with the department to map out that full set of kind of resources and training opportunities to make sure we're meeting each end user where they are and that they still have access to on-demand resources so they don't have to keep going back to procurement every time that they have a question. And then the fourth one is department culture and staffing. And this is really looking inside the department to make sure they have all of the resources and materials that they need to interact with the public and to interact with their end users within the other departments. So we've looked at the current training that's provided when you either start in the department or when you move to a different position in the department. And there have been some upgrades to Munis, the financial software. So we're working on kind of capturing some of those updates and some of this material to create a really robust and comprehensive training program. There are certain things that will be standardized that anyone coming new into the department needs to know, how to interact with Munis, some of the basic day-to-days of the department, but also if you're going to be, for example, the newly approved contracts officer position, what will initial training look like for that? How do we train them on contracts for the district and all of the appropriate CCSD and South Carolina codes and regulations, how they use the financial system, so that they're really empowered to succeed and they know what those expectations are from the beginning. And again, have those resources to refer back to as they get comfortable in that new position. And I'll pause there because it's a lot, but wanted to just highlight a few things. There are a lot of moving pieces here, and I want to commend the department because I think these 4 categories and these 32 initiatives are really robust, and they took ownership in developing all of them. We're here for capacity and support, but they're involved in the day-to-day of making this happen, of bringing ideas to us, of working with us to make all of these things a reality. I think they're really excited and bought into this as well.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. We're going to start off with questions from the committee. Mr. Griffin?
No questions right now.
No, we have, let's see. Ms. Roberson? Anything else? Do we have anybody else? Anybody else online?
Yeah, I'm online, Darren.
Grabowski, I'm sorry. There you go.
No problem. No problem. No, I don't have any questions. It's a great report.
Mr. Duke?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Let's go in person.
No questions.
I have a few. I guess I will start from the beginning on, I know we're looking at the internet update for the enhanced communications and whatnot. What about for VPN access? Are we looking to actually have that brought in as well, or do we already have that online right now?
I don't know.
That's not something we've been involved in, Jackie. is that correct? So y'all have something?
Could you be more specific with your question?
So if somebody is not able to be in person or be downtown or hardwired in, having VPN access to be able to work offsite.
In what type of capacity? I'm so sorry, I'm not following.
Somebody's
My
working from
apologies.
home when they need to gain access to the actual the software, be it Munis or whatnot. Do they have VPN access to be able to go forward and work from home?
Yes, Munis
Um,
does have
yeah.
externals.
Yes, from Munis, yes,
All
sir.
right, cool. So this is actually a question for you and for Mr. Craven. What do you see we can grow from all of this? Yeah. Where do you believe that the procurement office can grow? I know they talked about many of the things we're moving forward with right now. Where do you still see areas of growth for us moving forward?
So she highlighted a lot of the procedures that we are working on, a lot in the training piece specifically. So where we go to next is once we get our training program complete, then we're able to engage with the district and basically bring up the situational awareness level of procurement across the district. And I think that's kind of what's missing.
Mhm.
Once you get to that point where everyone has a good understanding of how the whole process starts as in the full procurement cycle from the beginning need to closing out a PO or closing out the contract, everyone has that understanding of how that process works. Then you can start thinking strategically, district-wide, different schools that are having the same needs, you can put them together. And so at that point, instead of having multiple schools purchasing the same thing at different prices, you can then strategically work things district-wide. As of right now, we're just very stovepiped on a lot of things procurement. So going forward, that would be what I would see is that strategic piece is when that those stovepipes kind of disappear.
How long do you think it's going to take for us to be able to get there?
I wish I had a magic 8 ball to be able to give you that answer. It's going to take time. It's a culture change, and
Right.
culture takes time.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what can the board or even this committee do to help you move forward?
The team right here is helping me for sure. So I wouldn't be able to be where I'm at without them. So continuing assistance from Mullen Jenkins is critical for me right now. Yeah, if they were to they're kind of scaffolding me right now. If they were to take that away, I'd have a hard time keeping the job going and advancing these initiatives that we're working toward.
And do we have a anticipated date on when the manual will be launching?
What?
The manuals that we're working on, do we have any type of anticipated dates?
So the procurement manual I'm working on right now when I have a chance to get to it, and that's something that could be published and out this fiscal year. The training program and those manuals, I don't know if I can be able to get to it by the end of this fiscal year, but that'll definitely be something that we're continuing working toward.
Cool.
And then if I may, I think some of it will depend on technology decisions being made, because obviously if we're making software changes, we would have to
Have to change it up.
provide additional training material and training webinars to support that change.
That leads right into my next question. What about the RFP? Do we know about when we're going to be looking to try to put that out? And are we planning for that within the upcoming budget?
Yes. So we're sitting down this week to talk requirements with our business intelligence team, because they would have a huge piece on the requirements that would go in that RFP. So we're hoping by the end of this month, we could have something out. That's kind of where we're looking at. So yes, we want to get it started this fiscal year.
The one that we're already in or the upcoming fiscal year?
I'm sorry?
The fiscal year we're already in or the
Yes.
upcoming fiscal year?
24.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe we have money set aside for this and ready to execute.
All right, my last question. I know we talked about the different trainings within the departments for the culture, the department culture and staffing, but have we been looking at different professional development for everyone within the department so they can move forward and potentially rise up the ranks as well?
Yes, we have a budget line every year for training, and we should be encouraging that and working toward that.
Perfect.
Yeah, those procedures are in place.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate
Mr.
it.
Calhoun, I've got a question if I could ask it.
Go ahead.
Since you brought up Munis, is Munis currently handling and generating KPIs?
No, sir. This is Jackie Carlin. No, sir, it's not. We are manually calculating our own KPIs.
Is it possible to have that? I guess it's a patch in on a Munis to where Munis could be producing and we could be regularly monitoring on a ongoing basis KPIs.
I can certainly follow up with our business intelligence office and inquire about that. And
Okay.
follow back up with you in a board update.
I would appreciate it.
So thank you. Ms. Russell just informed me that they're actually working on that with business intelligence right now. So they're already taking the lead on that.
Excellent.
So we can provide an update, in the next couple of weeks, maybe? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that would be excellent because if we can get those key performance indicators, looking out of it, I think that'd be a phenomenal tool for audit and finance to be looking over. Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. And we're going to move forward to our information for the action items coming up. As we stated last month, what we'll do is listen to all the information for the action items first, have public comments, and then we'll move into the actions for the action items. All right. We're going to go first with the advertisement of the committee vacancy. As we all know, when we redid the charter, we expanded the Audit and Finance Committee to 9 members. We now have two openings for left on our 2 vacancies on our Audit and Finance Committee. We've instructed the district to go ahead and place the ad for those. From our charter, we will move forward for, I believe it's 30 days that will be posted. And for a minimum of 30 days to be posted, and that would give us by next month for the March meeting to be able to review the different applications and make a recommendation to the board for make our recommendation for the board for final approval for the vacant slots. All right, we have any, I see.
I have a question. So when we talked about the possibility of expanding the committee a number of months ago, I thought one of the discussion items we had was that we would have a discussion amongst this committee as to what the qualifications are we're looking for to add to the committee. So we have, as you know, we've advertised for different positions. We look for, finance experience or IT experience or procurement experience. And I think it would be important for us to discuss what specific skills we're looking for 2 reasons. One, we might want to make that clear in whatever advertisements we would be putting out there. And number 2, when we do have applicants, how are we deciding which ones to choose among? And I think it's best if we discuss amongst ourselves what are those attributes we're looking for up front first versus trying to redefine that later in the face of existing applicants.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Do you want to start the conversation, Mr. Griffin?
Are you? So yeah, 2 things. One is, I think our committee charter says that between 6 and 9 members.
Mhm.
And so I think we have 7. So I think we meet that requirement currently.
Mhm.
So we don't have to add people, but if there are skills we think are important to add, then we have room to and should add those people. So I'm not predisposed to needing to add people or not. It's all about what skills do we need in my mind. But then to start the conversation of what skills do I think we would benefit from, I think having, when I joined, there was a committee member who was part of one of the hospitals. He was a CFO of one of the hospital systems. And I think having somebody who is a CFO, current or recently passed, or was previously a CFO of a large organization with a lot of employees, because I think being a CFO of a small company is very different. And this is a very large organization. And I think someone with that kind of experience could be additive. Relatedly, I think someone who has experience with audit committees and having been on audit committees, I think from a governance perspective, I think that's a skill set that would be additive to what we have. And then, of course, other more natural elements like
Hold on, Mr.
a
Griffin.
background in either accounting. Sorry, you would probably have those other skills. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Okay, now.
Sorry. Some standard finance skills or experience with audit and or experience with internal controls. Those are all basic skills that I think would be additive. I think if you found someone with those first two criteria, they would by definition probably have those skills, but those would be skills I would be interested in adding to the group.
Very much. Let's go ahead and move to Mr. Grabowski.
I have to agree with Mr. Griffin. I think the CFO of a large company will cover a lot of the skills that would be applicable to the size of the organization that the school board is, and definitely a large CFO. Having been a CFO of a small company, I know I can never manage. I couldn't even think about being the CFO of this school district. But and also I agree. Anybody if we could find with former audit committee, any skills with audit, retired, whatever. I think those are two definitely parts that if I was to define the application or not the application, the advertisement, those are skills that would be highly recommendable.
Thank you. Mr. Duke.
No, I agree with those, the comments that were made before that, yeah, we definitely in the advertisement, exactly what type of skills that we want this person to have will definitely be a lot helpful. And then of course, when we're reviewing those applicants, they'll help us decide, which one is going to be a better fit.
Absolutely. Ms. Roberson, I know you won, but and I know you said you weren't gonna participate much because you're not feeling well. So I can just meet with you later and figure out your priorities for this.
Nothing new to add on that first point. Agree 100%. Current or previous executive level leadership in a large organization. Somebody with the controllership background as well too, or in financial planning and analysis as well, would be helpful, even if possibly they're not in an executive level position, but within an organization of size and scope.
Ms. Stamp is not on, so that will leave me. I absolutely concur with all of you, particularly the audit and governance piece. I would like to also move in a little bit more into procurement as well, as you were saying. I think that can help us as we move forward, particularly as we're working with the manuals moving forward and helping out Mr. Craven and wherever we need. So thank you, Mr. Griffin. I truly appreciate it. This is a great conversation, and what we'll do as we this has not been posted yet, correct? No. All right, perfect. So
question. So I'm curious how it's going to be advertised. I would hope that we would be able to advertise these pretty widely. If I recall, I think when I learned of this position, I think it was in the newspaper, which hope maybe the Post Courier would be generous and give us a favorable rate on an advertisement, given that it's a important community service. But one, I want to make sure that we distribute the advertisements broadly and widely. But I also wonder if we might somehow make sure that some of the larger organizations in town, both the hospitals, the Boeings of the world, whoever the top 10 employers are, it might be worth reaching out to their finance and or board committees to make sure that they're aware of the position, to see if they have anybody who would be a suitable applicant.
I was going to say easily done through the chamber if you reached out to them, possibly.
That would make sense, and I would think they would have a vested interest in the school system being a success.
Denny, we're talking about the advertisement for the two positions. Do you have a plan about how we're going to go and advertise this out for the two open positions that we have? Is that your office putting it out?
I'll work with Ms. Denny on that, Mr. Calhoun, and we have a meeting with the chamber tomorrow. So we can certainly mention there. Thank you for that advice and see what applicants they might have, but I'll fill you in, Ms. Denny.
Okay, cool.
I think Ms. Denny may have just, yeah. I
Oh,
thought you
sorry.
did.
All right, thank you. We
And
will-
Mr. Calhoun, I don't see Ms. Stamp on, but I know Ms. Stamp has, when you mentioned procurement, I think that was a lot of her background was procurement at MUSC. So when you look at the current board and the committee, it does have a lot. We've covered a lot of the bases, but anyway, I just bring that up.
All right. Yes, thank you. Do we have the date for our next audit and finance meeting? Is that the March 5th? So with 30 days, we'll be looking at April actually, in order for it to come back to us, if we're gonna have the advertisement out for 30 days. So I just wanna put that out there as well. All right, any further discussion? All right, we're gonna move on to 3B, the spring 2024 bond anticipation notes.
Forgive me. So we have on our call on Zoom, we have Carol Temple, the bond attorney for our district, and she is going to cover the bond anticipation note for the upcoming year.
Thanks, Jackie. I was just trying to get my camera turned.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Ms. Clark.
I was going to straighten you out. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, it's that time of year. We come to you once a year for 2 series of bond anticipation notes. And this year we've got, as usual, we have Series A, which will cover fixed cost of ownership as well as paying the June 1st payments on the alternative financing bonds that the district still has outstanding. And then there's a Series B, which is the cash flow funding for the sales tax program. And that will pay off the Series 2023 sales tax bond anticipation notes, as well as give an additional $20 million in financing, cash flow financing for the sales tax projects. Both of these are short-term issues. The Series A will be retired in November with proceeds of short-term bonds. And then the Series B will be retired in May of 2025 with the sales tax proceeds of the sales tax bond anticipation note from next year. I think I said we always issue these in May of each year to have the funding available in time to make those June 1st payments, as well as to fund the fixed cost of ownership projects. A lot of that work takes place over the summer. And this year we're looking at amounts of not to exceed $70 million for Series A and not to exceed $160 million for Series B. And the vast majority of that portion, around $128 million, will be to pay off last year's bond anticipation note. So nothing really different here from last year, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, do we have any questions? Let's start in the room first, Michael.
Yeah, but I need to recuse myself from voting on this item.
Okay, we'll do. Just want to make sure everyone heard that Michael will be recusing himself from this vote. All right, Mr. Griffin?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Grabowski?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Duke?
No questions.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. I have no questions also. We're going to move forward to 3C, the fixed cost of ownership 24 reallocation.
Thank you, Mr. Calhoun. This is a reallocation for this current fixed cost of ownership program. It's taking contingency funding here as we near the end of the fiscal year. We've got 3 months left to expend, essentially taking 1.05 billion and distributing it to FM for project designs to give us some advanced head start for next year, as well as HVAC work, plussing up the project at West Ashley High School for their track. And then lastly, pushing 150K over to security emergency management. They've got 40 requests for additional cameras, access card readers from school, and they'll tap into as many of those as they can, get those done before the end of the fiscal year.
All right. Let's start with Mr. Griffin. Any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Grabowski,
No questions.
Mr. Duke,
No questions.
in person.
No questions.
All right, Mr. Baroe, which project designs are we getting the jump start on?
We've got 25 projects that we want to kick off, and I know Mr. Hamer is sitting somewhere behind me, might have some specifics on those projects.
Well, so these are system replacements throughout the school district. As Mr. Roy said, there are 25 projects that really cover a whole range from restroom upgrades to HVAC repairs. We do have some that will involve some exterior envelope, which helps with water intrusion. But what we're trying to do is just get ahead on planning and designing those projects so we are ready to go as soon as the board approves those projects and we can schedule them within the school schedule.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. Thank you. We will move forward to 3D, which will be the fixed cost ownership FY25.
All right, so this is the heavy hitter for the day there, Mr. Calhoun.
Yes,
A lot of detail. I'll try to be as brief as possible with the hope that the information we've provided in the board documents provides enough level of detail. I've got many of our program managers on the line in case there's any detailed questions. We're hoping that you'll push forward this list, approved prioritized list for FY25 fixed cost of ownership. That'll give us an opportunity to begin planning so that when we get the funds early this summer, we can hit the ground running. Behind these quad diagrams are 35 pages of spreadsheets that provide the next level of detail for the following slides that I'll present here in this program. The next two slides really just talk to the support that FCO provides to our pillars and our goals, either directly or indirectly. We support grade level instruction, quality teachers and leaders, as well as the wraparound services and the three goals with algebra, readiness, literacy, and college and career readiness. Want to try to catch up with me there, Steve? Can you go back to? There we go. So bottom line up front, for those that don't know, our fixed cost of ownership does provide for replacements and improvements in all of our schools. Everything from activity buses to auditorium lights, basketball equipment to band instruments, software to school radios, everything from little to big. We've got 17 program areas that we manage. Each of those are represented on a quad diagram that follow. Our request for this year is for 61 million, which is an increase from last year. The heavy hitters for those increases, I want to point those out. The facility condition assessment under facility management. The last one we did was 2013 by contract. We've updated internally since then. We have added different building systems like stormwater ponds, athletic fields. We've added those to that on our own, but it's time to have an independent assessment again so that we can get geared up for the next sales tax referendum and the next capital master plan. Security system replacement. This is a big project, a phased project within security with the hopes of integrating fire alarm, intrusion, and access control. Our access control system is now out of service life. And we're piecing things together to make sure that we can continue with that. This program will consolidate those three so that we've got an integrated program amongst them. Culinary arts overhauls. Every now and then we come forward with a large project. The last one was FY22. In this case, we've got two projects. One is the culinary arts replacement at North Charleston High School. The second is phase 1 at St. John's High School. Phase 2 would be the following year. Software. With the Esser end, we're rolling over a lot of software into this budget. We'll talk a little bit more about what those increases are on the software slide. I don't have it on here, but in addition to software, we've got some IT increases as well. I know Mrs. Roberson, she really wants to make sure we stay focused on equality. We treat the frigates like we treat the carriers here, if I can use a Navy analogy. Most of our replacements are simply based on life cycle and condition. So whether it's a Promethean board at Jane Edwards or Promethean board at Wando, it'll be replaced at the same time with the same item. So most of our systems are like that in this program. Moving on to the first program, this is by far our largest program, both in the money we put toward it and also for the backlog of items that we are not able to fund. That additional requirements of 39 million, those are projects below the line that we don't have funding for. We hope that in this sales tax program, if we achieve the 2% or higher growth every year, we'll have additional resources. We could potentially pull some projects off of this list and fund those with sales tax. You can see the base request in the lower left. This is everything inside, outside, on top of, and below ground at our schools, and everything in between. The variance request for FM, the real focus is that facility condition assessment I mentioned, but we have some internal puts and takes as well that didn't represent the bottom line, but reduced the number of individual projects that we have. Our control maintenance for our HVAC systems contract has gone up. We've got a plus up for that of nearly 400,000. Our vehicle costs have gone up, new purchase of vehicles. And we also want to begin to have more HVAC, plumbing, and electrical pieces and parts available in stock because of the supply line logistic challenges, so that we can take them off the shelf and put them in when we've got a breakdown at one of our schools. So we want to spend some money on that, which we didn't before. Moving on, we separate playgrounds from FM, but it is managed by Mr. Hamer. We've got 136 playgrounds across the district. We have a 10 to 15 year service life for playgrounds, depending on usage as well as proximity to the ocean, which has an impact for us. This program this year replaces 2 5 to 12-year-old playgrounds, Minnie Hughes and Pinckney, and 3 2 to 5-year-old playgrounds at CPA, James Allen Elementary School, and Sullivan's Island. The variance, doing a little bit of a plus up here. If you've been out to Angel Oak, their turf field, well, I don't want to call it a field. It's dirt. They have a very limited play area now with the field, with the school expansion. We want to put some turf on that field. And we also need some additional structures for the 2 to 5-year-olds at Drayton Hall. Next program, security and emergency management. I mentioned this on the Bluff slide as a plus up. On the far right, the variance is that provides the level of detail we want for bringing together our electronic door control system, our outdated intrusion alarm equipment, as well as our fire alarm system. The base request for this program, the big hitter on this one is replacement of the camera systems. We do those on a 10-year life cycle. We're only replacing 6. We'd like to do 9, but I want to soften the blow of the variance on this one. And if we have excess resources during the year, we'll pull those 3 additional programs, 3 additional camera systems up into next year with contingency, more than likely. This also supports all of our equipment in our schools, radios and things like that. IT, very complex. We've got multiple slides. We've tried to put it in programs that make it easier to manage and follow. Unfortunately, what that's resulted in this year is there are some wide variances that don't necessarily, they're not easy to follow at all, because we put different items in different buckets to make it easier to manage. The bottom line for all of these IT programs is an increase of 920,000. And that 920,000 is really on the far right corner of this slide, lower right corner. We really need additional funds to manage our electronic systems repairs, cameras, access controls, rolling gates out on our campuses. We've underfunded that in the past. We've got more than 8,200 cameras, over 2,000 electronic access control points, and 40 motorized gates. We want to put more money to make sure those are up to speed, and that's where that money goes for information technology. The classroom technology bucket, this program is also supplemented by sales tax. You can see on the far left, lower left, it's to support the computer labs, individual student devices, and other equipment. This is the next line is staff computing devices. We've broken this one out separately so we can track that more closely. These are replacement of devices and systems used by our teachers and staff. The last one for IT itself, we've pulled together all of program management and support into one. Most of our other programs, there is a line item for program management within each program. Because IT is so complex, we've got a separate slide for that so we can easily track it. This provides not only the internal support to manage all of these systems that we're buying and repairing, but also contract support that we use to do the same thing across the board for IT. The next one is software. When Mr. Craven was up here before and talked about being able to consolidate purchases, this is one program that, although the dollar value is extremely high, this consolidation has made a huge difference over the last 4 to 5 years. Learning services, by consolidating all of their purchases, by us doing it as a district, we've been able to roll purchases together instead of individual silos buying things. So we've gotten some efficiencies, some additional savings with larger purchases rather than individual buys. Nonetheless, we still have a variance this year of 1.9 million. Much of that is in, as I mentioned on the Bluff slide, in software that is moving from Esser to FCO in this case, rather than GOF. We've got the ability to move it in here. Learning services represents about 67% of this budget. Ops represents about 20% of this budget. So we're really the predominant placeholders here, but it's everybody: finance, business intelligence, HR. Everybody's got something in this program, and this binder here is the next level of detail behind it. Huge item. We take a hard look at that every year, and Ms. Simmons has done a really good job in learning services to make sure we're buying what we need, consolidating, and not buying different programs for the same type of service. Moving on, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. We're maintaining. We're actually dropping our request here to 1.2 million. We did get a plus up in reallocation earlier this year to support equipment, furniture within classrooms, office space, et cetera. We're feeling pretty solid with this program. Media Center, same thing. This program is managed by Christy James and Learning Services. It's everything from what's in the library used by the students, what's in the library used by the school, like our laminators and our awards makers, as well as the furniture that goes within the schools. We're looking at recapitalizing furniture for Oakland, Moultrie, and Minnie Hughes this year. We have some excess funds. We'll do Bell Hall as well. $1.2 million is the request for this program. Fine arts, this is our band and orchestra equipment, split evenly between the two, 98,000 each. We've got 28 schools that have bands. We have 24 schools that have orchestras. This recapitalizes equipment for our band instruments for them and also buys them additional instruments where they need it. Athletics, focus here is safety, making sure we've got equipment to protect our students. But you can see the variance request here split among a number of different things: additional school programs and doing some work at Military Magnet and St. John's High School. Career and technology education, I mentioned this being one of our big plus ups. The program, nutrition culinary arts program at North Charleston High School, complete replacement of what is there, as well as phase 1, which is buying the equipment at St. John's, moving ahead with phase 2 next year after we've got the equipment. Planning and real estate, they manage our auditoriums and our stadiums. This is replacement of equipment in those locations. We've added some of our smaller auditoriums with the variance request, North Charleston High School and the lecture hall at Academic Magnet. Transportation, even though we do get state buses, we have to put the cameras in those state buses, and we also have to maintain and manage our own activity fleet. This request buys 3 large buses, replacements, and 4 small buses, keeping our average age in the 13-year range for the large buses, 11-year range for the small buses. And we're also looking at buying a couple of vehicles for exceptional children, 1 small bus, as well as a van with these resources. Overall, a decrease in the program amount. Of note, we're also in the second last year of replacing bus cameras. Next year, we'll be able to zero out that line item. Last two programs, and these are relatively new. We added nutrition services, the equipment in our cafeterias into this program. It recapitalizes our service lines, our walk-in coolers, and freezers, as well as our steamers and ovens and other items in the cafeterias. And lastly, nursing services. The variance request here is to completely replace the remaining needs for AEDs in our schools, and also to provide some hands-free CPR equipment for training. With that, Mr. Calhoun, subject to your questions.
Thank you. Let's start online, Mr. Griffin.
Yeah, thank you for this. I think it's a helpful discussion. And I don't think it's, the purview of this committee to
Right.
pick and choose. I think your staff is much better positioned to make individual decisions, of course. So with that in mind, though, could you just give us a general sense, maybe not even the specifics, because I don't want it to take us down a rabbit hole, but could you give us a general sense of the types of things that aren't funded this year that would either get funded if we had the contingency, or if there was found money at some later date? Can you give us a sense of what are the types of things that we're not able to fund based on our current budget? Maybe the top handful of priorities.
So let me pull up my list here. I think the easiest one to go to is FM. We reduced the number of overall projects that we're able to fund this year. FM, just to give you an idea of what's next on their list below the cut line, includes a carpeting and a couple of classrooms at Hot Gap, athletic field lighting at Carolina Park that supports Wando, improved drainage for the baseball field at Deer Park, which supports Academic Magnet, a metal detector canopy at West Ashley High School. Now, they're not using metal detectors yet, but that one's on the list to be used in the event that they moved ahead with that. Replacing flooring in some areas at Baptist Hill, some dividers in splitting up a couple of rooms at Burke High School. So there's a number of individual school projects that are listed there that we try to pull up onto that funded list. I would also say that one of the other big cuts, or I would say cuts, plus ups that was requested was under information technology. We've got Mr. Naraki on the line. Tom, if you'd like to talk a little bit about some of the work that you're trying to do to increase Wi-Fi capability, consistency of Wi-Fi capability at the schools. We've cut some of that so we can begin the project this year and look forward to plussing it up next year. Tom, you there?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. So a lot of new requirements are coming for our Wi-Fi. A lot of students are wanting to bring devices. Staff are needing them to contact family members, but we're also having a lot of students with special needs, such as medical devices that are now Wi-Fi compatible for blood sugar and all those types of things. And what happens when all these get on the Wi-Fi, they're all competing for the bandwidth that we need to make sure we have the critical internet access for testing and schoolwork. So some of the things that we're doing is we're using E-rate funding, the federal funding from the telecommunications bill, to upgrade our Wi-Fi, which will allow us to take the guest and push it to radios in the hallway and dedicate the guest traffic and operational traffic for thermostats and lighting controls on a separate network, and keep it also segmented for security reasons, so that now we don't have vendors and guests on the production network. They won't have any resources. So we're just trying to upgrade it and just separate the traffic as much as we can.
Thanks, Tom. So one of the things I would point out to your point, Mr. Calhoun, actually, that was Mr. Griffin that asked the question. The requests from our program managers came in at 75.6 million, and we're at 61. One of the other limitations we have with this program is the money that we're able to get, and that's where I look hard over to my left here at finance. I look hard to my left here, and they keep me honest from how much we can bring into this program to manage our borrowing capability. So we are running a fine line with where we're at right now. I don't know exactly where that line is from a finance perspective, but I know we're pretty close, or I would have gone higher.
I'll add for your question, Mr. Griffin, for our purposes in learning services, we're keen on looking at usage. So a lot of our products or titles are associated with curriculum, adaptive digital technology. And so for an example, there is a title named Alex. That's an adaptive digital tool that both our high schools and our middle schools were using. By studying our usage reports, we were able to determine that the high schools were not using it at the rate, at the clip at which we would have expected. So it was the high school associate superintendent who actually offered to take that off the table. Therein lies our ability to remove titles, whereas we do have to add, because some items fell out of Esser, we have to add, but we also try to do our due diligence to remove when we can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Grabowski.
Yes, bless you. And that lion drink is, anyway, sorry. I'm so sorry. In the event that the 2% increase in tax revenues does not materialize, what contingency plans are in place to address the funding gap? I mean, this is a large number.
So this is a different program. If we go to that comment I made about sales tax and some of the projects being able to move over there, if we run short on sales tax projects, we really have to look at, do we reduce capital maintenance? Do we reduce capital IT? Do we take projects that we had planned for those out years and push those to the right? Or do we take a capital construction project or two that hasn't started and not fund that project? That's where we would have to manage within the funds that we have. I think we take advantage of wherever possible to bring in additional resources. I don't think we have any on the horizon. An example for that would be selling existing property that is excess. And I think we've done that as much as we want in the district at this point. That's another avenue of revenue that is not there anymore. So I think from a revenue perspective, I don't think we have other resources we can tie into. We'll just need to look at reducing or pushing to the right projects that we have planned at the end of this sales tax program.
Yeah, because that leads me to my next question on the prioritizing of, projects that are currently underfunded, and, really looking at what criteria you're going to be used to prioritizing them, and understanding that a lot of this is going to somehow have to be brought out to the community with clarity so that they can understand it. I mean, because this is a very ambitious growth based upon this 2% rate on when's the referendum ends on 2027. Am I correct on that?
The program runs through 2028.
2028.
Right. And I will say two things. One, there is some level of unassigned contingency in that program right now. So there is some float in there. And to your other point about which project. So back when this referendum was developed, the Board of Trustees prioritized the projects that we have in place now. So they put them in 3 waves, 1, 2, and 3, to be executed within 2 to 3 year windows. So our goal for prioritizing funding is to ensure that the money is there for the projects that are in the top waves, because those waves were designated because of their importance: life safety, program needs, capacity of the school. So there was a rhyme to and a reason to that prioritization. Those, in theory, are the most important projects. Based on those criteria, we want to make sure those projects are funded first.
Because, I know we need to start looking at starting the referendum project process, in the next year?
So actually the process will begin with this facility condition assessment that I'm looking for funding on. That facility condition assessment will take about a year. About 9 months into that, we'll begin to do the capital master plan. The capital master plan will take us a year. So if the capital master plan begins in calendar year 2025, runs to 2026, that puts us in a position to come to the board in the summer of 2026 with the referendum list that would go to the voters in November of 26.
just watching what the counties, talking about doing and everything, I just wonder sometimes, the appetite of counties to keep having additional tax referendums and new ones that are now being considered. So, it's obviously something we have to, get a jump on, let everybody, in my view, know it's a necessity.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's why, the more information we can get out to the community and understanding that we have these underfunded projects, it's just more important. Ms. Huggins, I'm just going to leave it on you. This is going to be something. I think this is great information. I have all the confidence. That's why I won't go through each one of these line items. I mean, because this is an awful lot of information. I just look at the big number, the 39 million, and I choke because I know you're relying on a constant 2% growth.
So to leave with a little level of confidence here, Mr. Hallis here to my right is the chair of the Citizens Oversight Steering Committee. When they meet roughly quarterly, we talk about communication and ability to put out our information. And in this past year, we put out the celebration of our Phase 4 program. We talked about the successes of that program, the effectiveness of the use of the dollars that we got from our taxpayers. This program, since its inception in 2011, has always had success in audits. And when you look at the execution of the program, the 2022 program, the 2017 to 22 program just closed. We're at over 90% complete with those projects. This 2023 to 28 program is only 1 year old. We opened Hersey last month, only 1 year into the program. So we're trying to get schools and renovations into the hands of our students and teachers early and often, celebrate the success with that project, with those projects, and demonstrating the use of those dollars and where it goes. And we've distributed those resources across the district, from up in Ondaw with renovation of St. James Santee, down into the heart of the city of Charleston, out to the west as well. So you're absolutely right. We want to continue to show what we've done so that we don't lose the taxpayers' confidence in this program to vote yes again.
And I guess my last question, it goes back to, risk management and scenario planning. And, and I would just ask, it's almost looking at an impact study on a budget increase item after you've passed the budget. It just seems that we need to have some type of planning exercises to model different outcomes, based on, a 1% versus a 2%. Granted, we hit gold if we get a 3%. But I don't know. I've never been an optimist on sales tax, but I've been proven wrong every year. So anyway, that's one thing I would just ask that if you can comment on what steps are being taken, that's fine. If it's something that you're considering in the future, I think that's fine too. But I do think the risk analysis based on those scenarios is critical.
Yes, sir. We'll be taking a look at that.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Calhoun.
Thank you, Mr. Duke.
No, I have no questions.
All right, we'll sit in person.
Make sure. So the delta really is 3.7 million. What we're seeing here, and that's largely one-time expenditures when I'm reading into this. It's not going to be a reoccurring expense in future years.
So that is a real good question. Most of the plus ups this year will stay in the baseline. Okay. So if you look at those bottom line upfront items, the facility condition assessment is a one-time plus up, but and the culinary arts overhaul is a one-time plus up. Although I have phase 2 of St. John's next year. Software will stay, the IT will probably stay, and the security systems will be anywhere between 3 and 5 years. So there is a mixed bag with any of these going up
Yeah,
or staying
I
consistent.
was going to make the comment, I can't believe it's been 2013 since the last condition
Yeah.
assessment.
The last formal. Now, we updated, we do a condition assessment of every school, all of the building systems every year,
Mhm.
roofs, HVAC, flooring, bathrooms. But it's always nice to have an independent assessment
Mhm.
so that, we have an outside look at what we're doing. And we've added a number of building systems to that 2013 report that
Mhm.
weren't included as well.
Right. So I think where my head was going with this, if there's a large amount of non-recurring items in here, that gives a little bit of a levered pull should some of these negative or potential headwinds coming our way in the economic environment persist with consumer spending as an impact sales tax. So.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I got to many of my questions I have written down. Ms. Carlin, you think we're good with this? We can.
Yes, sir. Finance is good with this.
All right, any further questions? Thank you. We're gonna move. Where are we at right now? We are at
1 echo. 3 echo.
3F. I'm
3
sorry
echo.
about 3E or 3F. Oh, we are at 3E.
I got Mr. Lynch on line for that one.
All right, Mr. Lynch, take it over.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
All is well.
Okay, so transportation, we're requesting a reallocation of 120,000. It's basically from savings from bus purchases and project contingency from our FY24 original. We're looking to fund a new project to install a propane filling station at the Northwoods Middle School bus lot. Building this new propane filling station would allow us to receive 10 brand new propane buses from the state. And these 10 propane buses would basically replace vendor buses that we currently have on state routes, which would result in a net savings of approximately $262,000 per year. We estimate the propane filling station to be about $120,000. We're basing that on a previous project that we did with Phase On.
Thank you. Any questions?
You had me at $200,000 annual savings.
Yeah. I agree. No questions. Don't change your mind.
She's already taking that money away.
Right. You really had me. So, all right, we have no further questions on that. We'll go ahead and move on to 3F. Capital Program Phase 4. Mr. Hamer.
Yes, good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman. So this represents savings for the capital maintenance plan in our Phase 4 program. As you can see, it's a fairly voluminous list, and most of the savings were realized in year 6 of the program. So actually, we do sometimes find savings in our projects. So again, if you look at this cumulatively for all the savings that we've realized on those projects, that adds up to just over $1.6 million, which we want to reallocate for 3 additional projects still in the Phase 4 program to be executed under that program. That's with adding more money to the Ellington painting project, adding additional funds to the Bridgeview HVAC project, which we'll execute over the next year, and adding more money to the Wando High School flooring project. Again, these are all the cumulative savings that we want to reallocate to those 3 projects.
And if I can just add, the temperature in Ms. Carlin's office is about 55 degrees right now. So this project is very important.
All right, let's go ahead and open it up for questions. Mr. Griffin.
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Grabowski.
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Duke.
No questions.
No questions.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, let's move on to 3G, the capital program. Mr. Hamer, back up.
Okay, so this is a reallocation under the Phase 5 program. This is to take savings from September Clark painting project and reallocate that to Curio. That's project just needed additional funds to complete the emergency generator. And again, we were able to find the savings with the painting project at September Clark. Relatively small amount, but still necessary for this board or for this group to reallocate.
All right, Mr. Griffin,
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Grabowski,
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Duke,
No questions.
Michael.
No questions.
How much more is needed to finish is that's the final reallocation that will be needed to finish the generator project?
For carryout?
Mhm.
Yes, sir. Again, this is not very much, but there's just a little piece of this, but this should complete what we wanted to do for that upgrade to the emergency generators.
Okay. All right, thank you. Moving forward, FCO FY24 budget reallocation for information technology.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is for IT requesting reallocation of FCO money, a total of 500, I can't even read now, 584,400 from two of our accounts into staff and student replacements and audio visual. We got ahead on our student device counts. So that was where the extra $500,000 came from. And now we're short in staff computing devices.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Griffin.
I defer to Mr. Duke.
Mr. Duke.
And Tom, those staff and student replacements, I think we talked about during our meeting, those are made up of Chromebooks and Apples, correct?
So the student devices are Chromebooks and iPads. The staff devices are typically Microsoft products.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Grabowski. Lost out. Michael, any? All right. Mr. Barori, would anything that's happening with this reallocation affect you for the FCL 25?
No, sir, that's been taken into consideration with Mr. Araki.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
We'll move forward to 3I, another budget reallocation. Or Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Calhoun. This reallocation is from the Phase 5 Sales Tax Program. The savings from the James Island Early Education and Family Development Center that was rescinded in fall of last year by the board will be used to fund annexes at James Island Elementary as well as Styles Point Elementary to expand their early learning. In addition, Styles Point will be receiving an expansion to their multi-purpose cafeteria as well as media center to ensure space equity with schools of similar size. The remaining savings will be reallocated to two projects that are currently under construction, which is the West Ashley High School Athletic Multipurpose Space and Military Magnet Athletic Multipurpose Space. Two other projects that are currently not under construction, savings will be reallocated to the St. John's High School Stadium as well as James B. Edwards Elementary School. This is an action item for reallocation.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Mr. Griffin.
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Grabowski.
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Duke.
No questions.
I have no questions. Thank you very much. We shall move forward to this great donation that we have, which is 3J.
Good afternoon again. So on behalf of Mr. Richard Gordon and the CTE department has been in touch with the Naval Information Warfare Center, Mr. Todd, and they've been graciously wanting to provide us about $85,000 in school supplies, anywhere from binders, index cards, notepads, padfolios, paper, etc. So per the policy, anything above 10,000 requires to come to the board to be reported. So this is our information report that we expect, as long as it's great with the board, to receive these supplies for the students.
I have a question, but I'm gonna wait till the end. Mr. Griffin?
Duly noted and appreciated.
Absolutely appreciate it. Mr. Grabowski?
Duly noted and appreciated.
Mr. Duke?
No questions, and thank you for the donation.
Absolutely appreciate the donation. I don't know who to ask this. Some of these things, like the CD, DVDs. Do we need it?
I would have to defer to Tom, the IT guy, that whether or not we
I mean,
have any skills. I don't have any in my office, but
like I said, I appreciate that $85,000 worth of donation, but I'm just looking at some of the things like, all right, will they just go sitting up at Bridgeview, or will we actually put this to good use?
So Mr. Calhoun, we considered this in cabinet this morning, and the recommendation that we'll review with Mr. Craven later is that these items be donated to the teacher supply closet, and then teachers be able to access them as needed based on whatever they need in their classrooms for their students and or for their own usage. There are some, and shockingly, I know, but there are still some schools that use some sort of CV DVDs for various things. So we will send them there and then work with the teacher supply closet if they're not needed.
Word. Thank you. That's what I'm really looking for. Do we have a plan for
Yeah,
it? Because
yes, sir.
take it in.
These are a lot of things that we didn't want to just accept and sit in the warehouse. We wanted them to go to the most needy teachers in schools. And so we discussed that way to distribute.
Word. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. All right. Any further questions? All right, we're gonna move forward to 3K, purchasing contracts greater than 250. Mr. Craig.
Stay up here.
Yep.
So for this month, we have 21 line items for a total of $30 million, $800,000. And I guess I'll just open up for questions. All applicable parties are here on Zoom to answer questions.
All right, Mr. Griffin.
No questions.
Mr. Grabowski.
I have no questions.
Mr. Duke.
No questions.
No questions.
All right. Actually, I'm good with this. And I do like the new reporting that you're putting on here. So, all right, cool. Thank you. Now we are going to move forward. We just got done with 3K. We're going to move toward the public comments. Do we have a sign-up sheet?
Yes.
As mentioned before, we are going to do our public comments in the way that most constituent boards, as well as with the way the board run it. We're going to have 2 minutes per comment. Please only address the issues at hand, as well as do not mention anyone personally. Just address us moving forward. And we're going to start off with Mr. Fine, Jeff Fine.
Chair, I welcome you. You did mention an email. I will be extended a little bit. Did you not remember?
I don't, but
You
go ahead.
said you'd give me a few extra minutes.
A few extra minutes?
A few extra minutes or so, because I have like 38 items here. Okay, well, all right.
Go ahead,
First of all, I'm Jeff Fine, F-I-N-E. Y'all mentioned the Citizens Oversight Steering Committee. What happened to this and when does this meet? Because this is the first thing I ever heard of that. Most of these are all questions. Also, how many business partners does CCSD have? We have very, very few compared to everybody else. And the rest is all about P cards. Who's responsible for P cards? Do we have a list of all the P card holders? I asked through FOIA for a list and they said it was not available. How do you check if they still work for CCSD, if they're inactive? If so, are they all current employees? I still know of 2 former employees that still have P cards that are purchasing. Billing statements were made public until September 2023 when I personally reviewed the month, had questions, and now they're not available. We spent $4.893 million in P card purchases in August 2023. After questioning through FOIA, the statements are not available to the public anymore. Also through FOIA, asked for the next month and they told us not available. In August of 2023, I found 5 former employees using P card purchases which I did bring to the finance board and CFO attention, and they responded, asked me for names. I said, if I can find them, you can find them. Do we have a P card administrator? And also, how can somebody that has a P card buy gift cards at Walmart? Every month since 2022, there have been an average of 5,000 transactions per month using a P card. Can someone explain why so many transactions over $2,500? Isn't that the limit by law, $2,500? Some purchases are being made consecutive days with the same card holder to stay under the $2,500 limit. The code also states purchases over $2,500 are reviewed by the Director of Procurement, and any questionable unjustified purchase reported to the CFO and corrective action has been taken. So with the auto P cards, why do we only review 25 P cards out of 50,000 transactions for the year? We definitely need another audit firm. They're not doing their job. If this is all they sample and audit over 50,000, that is unacceptable. Does anyone notice that P cards average $4.8 million every month in CCSD when comparing other school systems? Greenville County, with 102,000 students, only average 1.1 million. Something's not right. Greenville, example, in August of 2023 had 900,000, whereas we had 4.8. Dorchester had 600,000 in the month. Richmond County had 300,000 a month. I sent this to the Finance Committee, example how Richmond and Dorchester make this available to the public, and so employees can be held accountable. Each of the board members did get that copy.
All right.
And why don't you wonder why CCSD struggles with budgets? And also the district's P card manual, and where's the internal control? It says what type of purchases are allowed and prohibited from splitting.
Mr. Fine, can you give me a conclusion?
All right, I almost went there. Okay. What I've got in here is identified 278 P card purchases in August 23 greater than the district threshold of 2,500. That is very inappropriate. And also, why don't we utilize reimbursement statements, which although the school systems do when they have travel, Uber, hotels and all, they always get reimbursed. And then the other thing is we have South Carolina Code 1135-4410 states we have a procurement review panel. Why don't we have this? Cool. It's in a code. And also state purchases should not be used available.
Thank you, Mr. Fine.
Okay.
I appreciate it. And also, can you give me a copy of that as well? So
I did send you a copy. I just didn't know about what's going on here, but I do want to make sure that we do an overhaul of our directors and get a straight answer. We're not getting straight answers when you ask questions.
Absolutely.
And we don't need excuses, and the taxpayers are lacking knowledge and nothing's made public anymore.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We will move forward to Joy Brown.
I can follow that. First of all, I want to take a second to thank you for allowing public comments because it is helpful for us to be able to check in as a member of the public who feels the impact of things that are happening, however unintentional, and share the implications of those with you. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I did want to mention when you all were talking about filling spots for audit and finance, instead of looking for CFOs, because the district does have CFOs, we have very highly qualified people. And to the points made before, it is not really in the purview of audit and finance to go over line items that far. So I just want to say, as far as like getting people from the chamber and blah, blah, additionally, please consider folks who have knowledge of the district. And don't worry, I'm not going to apply. It's not me. But I would like to see people who do have in-depth knowledge and perspectives for the district, not just fiscal perspectives. I don't want it to be restrictive to only top tier people, like just putting out there. Anyway, the reason I am here is FOIA. So I got an email that said charges for FOIAs are at the request of the board, specifically audit and finance. I did follow those meetings in November, but in December, Mr. Calhoun, you did say that if FOIA requests are for public interest, that fees can and shall be waived. There is nothing in the fee schedule to define anything. You know, it just says, you know, per hour, whatever it is. It doesn't say what that means. It doesn't say what can be waived. I have seen other
entities that use FOIA that have things like a 15-minute time limit or a certain amount of pages, but there's nothing, and I don't want that to be prohibitive to us getting information as the public. So I would like for maybe audit and finance to take that up. And I just have one more second, sorry. Also, if there's a way to make payments different for FOIAs than just checks, because that can be, it adds time. Not everybody has a checkbook anymore. Just to take that into consideration, please and thank you.
Thank you. As we see, we
Mr.
have,
Calhoun, would you like Ms. Denny to respond to any of the
we can
FOIA
follow up.
the FOIA information publicly?
Sure. Ms. Denny.
Ms. Denny, do you want to respond publicly just so the public knows about payment?
I'm happy to. So we'll have credit card, thanks to Stephanie and her team, we'll have credit card processing of payments. Should be up and running here within the next week to 10 days. Yeah, it shouldn't take long at all. The other piece about the fees, we do have set our fees at an estimate of 20 seconds per page to review. So it's intentionally designed to not be prohibitive at all from the public gaining access to public documents.
Cool. Thank you. All right, we will move on to our actual actions. Again, these are, this is everything that we went through for our information items. I will call for the motion in a second and then further discussion if there is any further discussion, and we will move forward. We're going to start with, which would now be 5A, the advertisement of the committee vacancy. Do we have a motion to, excuse me, there we go. Do we have a motion to approve the advertising to fill the remaining 2 vacancies on the Audit and Finance Committee?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right, the ayes have it. We'll move forward to 5B, the spring 2024 bond anticipation notes. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the spring 2024 bond anticipation notes in the amount of not exceeding, I'm not going to read the entire motion, but not exceeding 70 million series 2024A and not exceeding 160 million series 2024B to fund each of the following that are listed under the public comment. So we have a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right, we'll move forward. The ayes have it, excuse me. We'll move forward to 5C, fixed cost ownership and budget reallocation. All of our fund budget reallocations. So this one would be the motion to approve the reallocation of funds as shown as in the resolution that was attached by Mr. Barone. Do we hear a motion?
So moved.
We have a
Second.
motion, a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. The ayes have it. We'll move forward to 5D. This is FCO FY25 project list. This motion will be to approve the prioritized list of projects under the fixed cost of ownership FY25 project list as submitted by Mr. Barone. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. The ayes have it. We will now move forward to 5E. This will be the budget reallocation for transportation as presented by Mr. Narawaki. Thomas Narawaki. Narawaki. Did I say it right? Thank you. Narawaki. We're gonna get there. And actually, I believe this one was actually presented by Mr. Lynch. I'm sorry, I apologize, but I'm gonna get it right. This is a motion to approve the FY24 FCO reallocation for transportation as presented by Mr. Lynch. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion, and do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye, the ayes have it. On to F5, a motion to approve the reallocation of funds as shown in the resolution, as in the attached resolution presented by Mr. Hamer. We have a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion with a second.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Excuse me. Moving on to 5G, the 2023-2028 capital program sales tax capital maintenance budget reallocation. And this one was presented by Mr. Hamer. So this would be a motion to approve the capital maintenance budget reallocation as shown in the resolution presented by Mr. Hamer. We have a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion and do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 The ayes have it. We're going to move on to 5H, the fixed cost ownership, FCO FY24 board reallocation, budget reallocation. This one was by Rocky. Getting there. I'm getting there. All right. This will be the motion to approve the reallocation funds as shown in the resolution. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. We will now move on to 5I, which would be the sales tax budget reallocation as presented by Mrs. Shaw. This will be the motion to approve the reallocation of funds as presented by Mrs. Shaw. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All right, we're going to move on to our great donation. This will be the motion to approve the list of donations greater than $10,000. We want to thank our friends for this donation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would like to call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
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 All right, the ayes have it. Lastly, we will move forward to our purchases and contracts greater than 250,000. This will be a motion to approve the list of purchases and contracts greater than 250,000 through October 25th, 2023. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 The ayes have it. All right, we will now move to our information items. The first one being information technology. Mr. Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was great. So the IT steering committee met on January 11th or January 12th, and we had two members present, and we had a couple who were not, but we had a great meeting talking mostly about cybersecurity and where we felt Charleston County School District is in its posturing in its security footprint. So after the board conversation about some of the audits that they are recommending and the more frequent audits, I am taking a lot of initiatives to get prepared for those by looking at past audits, both financial audits and cyber audits, and make sure that we're not going to find the same type of findings. So we talked a lot about those types of things. We're also getting ready for a security penetration test where we'll hire an outside agency to come and see if they can penetrate our network from the inside and from the outside. We've also added something to the scope of work, which is going to ask them to take the credentials of a high school student. And with that level of credentialing, what could they possibly do from the inside to test our security posture and our security firewalls and those types of things from inside. And we laid out some of the plans that we have for the rest of the fiscal year. And we had a long discussion about some community activities that Mr. Duke had come up with and doing some cyber training in community forums. This will be after hours at schools, either in conjunction or standalone from other district type activities. But we'd like to be able to do some type of training for parents and students as well. that could be fun and entertaining and instructional as well to help students and parents really understand what they don't understand possibly. And that was the extent of the meeting. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I appreciate that. Do we have any questions? So first, actually, Mr. Duke, do you have any anything you would like to add?
No, I mean, as Tom said, the district has gone through a lot of lengths to make sure that the networks are secure. And when you compare CCSD to other comparable school, special education units, we're far along in making sure the network is secure. And on top of that, then we decided, I looked at it and said, we need to go to the next level. And that is making sure the students and the parents make sure their devices that they use on our networks and do at home, nothing comes from their home networks back to the school network. So that's why we started thinking about doing some type of presentations, training for families after hours.
Or I guess my only question would be, what do we need to do to help move that forward? Particularly that class, that training that we're just talking about.
So Mr. Brody has mentioned that there are now several community meetings that are going on monthly around the district, and possibly we would get onto one of those as a trial to see how it works, and we'd just give it a shot in one of those meetings, and if it works, we would do more.
Yeah, we have been working on a presentation. Tom and I have slides that, at least that cover the general that we would want to do and activities that we want to do for different grade levels. Mm-hmm. And now we're just looking for a small platform, possibly looking at 1 or 2 schools that are willing us to go to their school at some time and try to do this type of activity and see how it goes. And it'll adjust based upon, are we going to a high school audience, a middle school audience, or an elementary audience?
Thank you. Do we have any further questions, Mr. Griffin, Mr. Gabowski?
Yeah, I got a quick question. I can't remember if we've discussed this in a prior meeting or not, but I know you described before all the work that you do to protect the network itself from penetration. Have we done or do we do periodic audits of the buildings themselves to protect from cyber attacks that could be done at the building systems level outside the scope of our actual network? Because presumably each building's of a different age and we've got disparate systems that handle different elements, and some of them may or may not be connected to the internet or other tools. Are we protecting, or are we auditing those, or what are your thoughts on building level protection from that type of risk?
No question, sir. I just got back from a conference last week, and that was one of the things that we're talking about is the building automation systems. Home Depot got hit, Target got hit through, thermostat type devices. So all those IoT of Internet of Things are things that we're, wanting to look at our contracts with our vendors, because we may put protection on our network side, but if they have a back door, whether it be cellular or if they have their own circuit coming into their device so that they can manage and monitor, that just alleviates any level of firewall protection that I can put. So it's a great question. We're going to be looking at creating an auditing process for that and possibly using procurement to help us get that into the contracts.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a question, and maybe it went by so quickly. So as I understand it, we're looking into starting a program like we've been doing for years with the Air Force on Cyber Patriot, where we teach students how to hack Microsoft. So are we looking into something similar into how to hack our own system using our students?
No, sir. The penetration test is done to test our level of security. So we're giving this auditing firm, a student credential. It wouldn't be an actual student account. We would just give them an account with a high school student's level of access. And we would want to know, what would a high school student who's very creative, what would they be able to do inside of our network to make sure we don't have any holes, and to make sure that they can't breach on one side of production versus just internet access only. So we're not teaching the students to do anything. We want an auditor or a professional hacker, if you will, to use those credentials to see what a high schooler could do, worst case.
I mean, because one of the most amazing things I've ever seen is that because it's always funny whenever we host a Cyber Patriot program, it always seems interesting that we have Spay Wars over here helping us judge because they're looking at these little fifth graders and what they can do to Microsoft. I'm just wondering if maybe we shouldn't be looking to some of our students to actually see what I know they can do. I do appreciate you pulling out, professionals, but I mean, sometimes I would love to look at, I just know the capabilities of what these kids can do through what we've done at Cyber Patriot with wonderful old Microsoft. But we all know that issue, but it's just something to consider. I know that's obviously a curriculum, item, but I just see it going. We're having problems. The state has just updated us on, our phone issues. It went from the computer now to the phones and QR codes, and it's just incredible. So the more you can do, the better. I appreciate it.
Mr. Grabowski, if we do that in the curriculum and the student's successful at hacking, do we give them an A or an F?
I'm just saying, whenever they're, one of the best, and it was like 3 years ago. The kid was from Center Clyde, and, they went and talked to his grandma because this kid was just brilliant what he was able to do. So I just know our school must be filled with these little geniuses. I always love it when you can get students involved, and people say, why can you teach them how to hack? And I said, well, you can't defend against a hack if you don't know how to hack. So anyway, enough said. We'll move on. Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you. And we will be moving forward to our monthly capital projects report.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee. I'd like to present the December 2023 capital projects report. Our revenue collections were $350,000 over the cash flow model projections based on the most recent collections, with 2% growth over the prior year. The expenditures for the programs are as follows. The 2010 through 2016 program, 0 expenditures. The 2017 through 2022 program, $884,000. The 2023 through 2028 program, $5.6 million. The 2023 through 2028 program funded with long-term debt was $574,000. The fixed cost of ownership fiscal year 24 program is 3/4 of the way through the school year. And as previously presented, the band 2024 and the fixed cost of ownership fiscal year 25 project lists have been presented for your approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
So I now know where the 2% came from, right? It's your wonderful calculations, projections that we're going to be looking for 2% in the future to keep on coming, right?
Well, that is based with our financial advisors. Just monitor it.
I know, but you're reporting it. Your history. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Costello. We're going to move forward to Ms. Carlin with the Esser update.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So our Esser update through December 31st, 2023, we have already spent to date approximately $35.9 million. So altogether, we have spent $115.3 million. We currently have $24 million encumbered, and so our remaining balance through the end of December was approximately $23.9 million. You'll notice on the far side, there's a column called reimbursed to date, which is $95.3 million. That is the claim that will be filed later this month. If you recall, we file claims on a quarterly basis. And so we'll be filing that later this month to get reimbursed through October 2023 through December 2023 expenditures. Also included in the packet online on board docs was the expenditures by object. And not much has changed. We continue to have salaries and benefits around 44% of the total budget, as well as purchase services at 32% and supplies at 7%. And that concludes the Esser update through December 31st, 2023.
Okay.
Mr. Carlin, I believe here we're going to talk a little bit too about about the Esser impact report and what we're anticipating as we begin the FY25 budget cycle. So I think, Stephen, thank you so much, Stephen. There are a few slides here that we want to go over with the Board of Trustees. Before I begin, however, I really, really have to thank a group of dedicated people led by Michelle Simmons, led by Jackie Carlin and Don Kennedy, who have put in time and effort to ensure that this process is flawless to the greatest extent that any human can do, a report that's flawless, and a great group of committed principals who are also part of this impact report process to assess the way we've used Esser. So Stephen will go to the first slides, of course, acknowledging that this work is inherently linked to the goals and pillars of the district, to our work with ensuring rigorous instruction, wraparound services, and high-quality teachers and leaders. So that the public knows, we had an impact review as we considered the work that we've done the last few years utilizing Esser relief funds. The first round was comprised of a committee of principals, district leaders, and senior level chief leaders who took a look at over 140 impact reports that were submitted to the district for consideration of continuation of both FTEs, people, and programs essential to the work in both schools and departments. The second round was conducted by the cabinet members who looked at the financial implications, the prioritization of the work that aligns with our goals and pillars, and as we look at how we are going to universally consider the allocation of resources to schools moving forward in the FY25 budget. And then today we're here to present a brief overview of the work to the Audit and Finance Committee. Stephen. As you may know, Mrs. Roberson, Mr. Calhoun, and Mr. Grabowski and other board members on today's Zoom and here in the room with us, this work was guided by a rubric that looked at how the ESSER 3 initiatives in our schools aligned with A, the pillars and our board goals and guardrails, B, how it impacted students, 3, how it aligned with the needs of the district, 4, how we assessed it with reliable measures, and then 5, how it was inherently linked to student outcomes. Here is a breakdown of what we found. And again, this was very, very tedious work. Stephen, I don't know, can you pull up that spreadsheet, the Esser spreadsheet? Some board members have participated over the course of the last week in meetings with me, and I was able to show them the work that is captured here, which is the essence of how a team of people looked at every impact report in this district. I did not tell Mr. Comeback, the principal at West Ashley High School, that I was going to use him as an example, but I am going to. If you look on the first line here, line 2, actually, you'll see that a group 2 was assigned to look at the impact report that West Ashley High School submitted. It was the only impact report submitted that received all available points for each department or each categorization here. The impact report is linked here, and then you'll see up to 90 points could be accrued through the review of the groups. You'll see in each area that West Ashley High School received up to 15 all points in its review. And then if, Stephen, you continue scrolling over, the committees provided. Here, you'll see that the committees provided comments as they reflected on each area. We then looked at the percentage of pupils in poverty that was demonstrated at each school, then including the numbers of pupils in poverty on the 45th day, as well as the number of students enrolled. We then went a step farther. So again, I really have to applaud Mrs. Carlin and her team. They broke down the personnel cost or the program cost for each associated item. And then we ranked those items accordingly to how they scored based on unbiased group of professionals. So if we go back, Stephen, to the Esser program report presentation, you'll see perfect right there. You'll begin to see here the breakdown of what I just showed you on that massive spreadsheet. On this slide, you'll see in round 2, the Esser program impact review from schools. In essence, the schools requested of the 300 and some odd FTEs that we currently have built in to Esser, a representation here of the school's request to continue 98 and a quarter, which is an $8.1 million cost to continue. We've broken down on this slide for audit and finance members, and we'll share this with you via board docs, how those FTEs pan out in regards to school-based allocations. Interventionists, family service advocates, teachers being the highest ranking request there from our schools, and instructional coaches. If we go to the next slide, you'll see here the impact departments suggested those FTEs had on programming and the request for continuation, equaling $17.2 million in request. A lot of those, again, are school-based requests that are funneled through our departments. For example, the number of MLL teachers that we have, the number of teachers or teacher assistants that are represented in some of the feeder pattern requests out in District 23, District 20, and District 4. Then you'll see a majority of the remaining FTEs that departments have requested continue are represented by wraparound services that we do believe have contributed positively to student outcomes. Taking another quick look there, you'll see nurse liaisons represented, some administrative requests, and then other classified employees. If we go to the next slide here, again, to reiterate, the requests that for continuation from Esser are represented by both FTEs and programs. You'll see here a breakdown of both schools and departments, how many programs were requested to continue from schools and departments, and the cost for that, totaling about $7 million. You'll see these items broken down specifically on this slide. If we go to the next slide now, what you'll see here is a consolidation of what I've just quickly reviewed. A combination of FTEs, which equals about 302, that schools and departments have requested to remain, equaling $25.3 million, and a total of programs that schools and departments have requested to remain based on the impact for students. You'll see that broken down by elementary, middle, and high school level and departmental level. And then you'll see over to the right what the cabinet and I are currently working on as we think about the FY25 budget. If we go back to that spreadsheet, which I won't ask Stephen to do. No, I'm not asking you to do that. So if you scroll quickly down, Stephen, and scroll all the way over to the left, you'll see here that this spreadsheet represents how many line items, Stephen? Keep going down, 100 and like 143, 144. Mm-hmm. You'll see all the requests detailed here. How many are those? I can't see. 148. Can you see that really? 149. Thank you, Miss Simmons. 148. You were close, Captain. Now, if you scroll back up, Stephen, what we're looking at as a cabinet now in complete transparency is where we draw that cut line. Where we draw that cut line. It's very clear that if we go back, Stephen, I'm going to ask you to go back to that other slide. If we go back to this slide, we clearly cannot afford, as we think about sustainability and how we're going to work with the board and how we're going to work with taxpayers, we clearly can't sustain that cost. So if we funded all initiatives that have principals, central staff leaders have requested, it would be close to $33 million. So we're going to have to draw that line somewhere. as a cabinet, we've started to look where we might do so. And we've decided, we haven't made a decision on where that line is cut. And Mr. Comeback is excited because he knows he's at the top of that list. But if we were to cut that score at 70 points, for example, out of 90 possible points you could earn, based on how these programs and FTEs impact student achievement, we would be asked or bringing forward to the board a $5.1 million line item for sustainability for Esser. Now, I'm not saying we're going to cut at 70 or recommend to the board a cut at 70, but we have to decide what's above that line and what's below that line, because clearly all of these things are not sustainable. Now, as trustees and the Audit and Finance Committee members, we're trying to work on another way to resource schools and fund them equitably moving forward that will hopefully take care of a lot of the FTE requests. You can see that a majority of the request out of Esser is for sustainability for people who are providing support to kids. So if we go to the next slide, we want you to know, we've talked a little to the board about this the last 2 or 3 meetings, and I've been able to do so one-on-one with board members over the course of the last week, but we're looking at a weighted student formula as we move forward. How do we make sure that we think creatively about how we maintain student progress and give schools autonomy with what they need? For example, again, Stephen, I'm not going to ask you to go back a few slides, but it was clear that schools value interventionists, schools value teachers who are in front of kids, and our departments value these wraparound supports. If you go back a slide. But it would be short-sighted of me as the district's leader to say, okay, well, we're just going to make a blanket statement because 21 of our schools have said they need parent advocates. So we're just going to uniformly fund that across the district, or all of, because 60 of our schools say they need interventionists, we're just going to put interventions in 60 schools. From my perspective, it's a short-sighted way to look at how we resource schools. So we're looking, Stephen, if we go back to that weighted student formula slide, at how we, one back, my friend. Thank you. How we do this. How do we fund schools based on need? How do we give schools autonomy to decide how they use their resources? How do we then ensure centrally and as a board that we're accountable for the resources we provide them while making it clear and transparent to the public and to parents how we're doing that? So Stephen, next slide. As we're thinking about what to maintain with these Esser funds, we're looking at this student formula that would resource or allocate resources based on pupils in poverty, which impact all our schools from east of the Cooper out to Hollywood to Johns and James Island, and how we allocate resources to schools that don't necessarily receive them with Title I. For example, if you look at West Ashley High School, whose feeder schools are Title I, but who just missed the 65% cut for Title I designation. Mr. Comeback has 1,858 students enrolled. Over 1,000 of them are pupils in poverty with a 59% poverty index. So how do we use poverty to guide how we resource West Ashley High? So Stephen, I'm going to ask you quickly to pull up that other spreadsheet that I may have provided to you in advance of this meeting. So again, I want to thank Mrs. Carlin and her team for the just detailed work they've done here. Mr. Kennedy, who's continued to help us think about this work based on models across the nation. You'll see here we've started looking, Audit and Finance team, in anticipation of these budget conversations, which will begin with our Board of Trustees next week. We're looking at how we fund schools based on a pupil ratio up to 7. For every 7 students in poverty, for example, allocating 1 additional student to that school's enrollment. We're looking at models, if we're able to get it pulled up here for you, of 7, 5, 1 to 7, 1 to 5, 1 to 4, 1 to 3, and 1 to 2. So we've broken down every school in our district. We by the number, here we go. I won't switch over to the schools, but we'll stay on this. We'll stay on this slide here. And my eyes are really bad, so I'm going to have to pull that up on my screen. And if I have it, there it is right there. You'll see the summary report here is Mr. Calhoun, Mrs. Roberson, Mr. Grabowski, and other board members and audit finance team, broken down by what I just suggested. We've looked at every school in the district. If we were to transition to this pupils in poverty model, for example, what it would look like and what it would cost us if we did a 1 to 2 ratio, a 1 to 3 ratio, and Stephen, if you'll scroll over down to a 1 to 7 ratio. If you look at that 1 to 7 ratio, if we were to go with that model, if we were to recommend that model to our board, it would yield 135 allocations in addition to the base student allocation, which would be about $11.6 million. Now, in consideration of the example that we've used, Mr. Comeback requested 3 Esser FTEs that he earned all possible points for. In the 1 to 7 model, Mr. Comeback would earn 8 FTEs based on his pupils in poverty. So we think that this will help us meet halfway between the exorbitant cost of the resources that our principals have asked for and allocate equitably based on student need. And Mrs. Carlin, again, I just want to thank her very publicly. She's resourced this out how it looks over 3 years, because in conversations with board members over the last week, we've talked about a sustainable funding model to, over the course of 3 years, thinking about how we move forward in budgeting, budgeting on 3-year cycles based on what resources Ms. Simmons and our schools tell us they need to ensure students continue to achieve at high levels. So this is a lot. We did our very best to respond to Mr. Calhoun, your and Mrs. Roberson's request to bring this information quickly to you, to review, to look at some preliminary numbers. We feel confident in our ability to make sound decisions that equitably support our district from District 1 all the way to District 23 moving forward. So I'm open to any questions that you might have. I welcome the contributions of Mrs. Simmons, of course, and Mrs. Carlin in these questions. So Mr. Calhoun, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
I know it's a lot.
Yeah.
But I hope it gets at what you
That's exactly what we need.
wanted us to do today. Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Again, couldn't have pulled it off without the assistance of Mrs. Simmons and her team, Mrs. Roberts, Mr. Kennedy, and certainly Mrs. Carlin and her great team.
We'll open it up for questions. Mr. Griffin? We lost him. All right, Mr. Grabowski.
I know when I first saw a lot of this is just so much to take in. I'm glad we're starting it in February.
I think we lost you.
I think we lost you, Mr. Grabowski.
And try to understand how. Hear me?
Hold on, we can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
Mhm.
Yes, sir. We can hear you now. Yes, sir.
That's what happens when you work on board a 1942 ship. Internet comes and
Occupational
go.
hazard, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
I'm sorry about that. Anyway, I was overwhelmed when I first saw these numbers because I just realized how much, trying to understand how these impact studies and how the allocation of points was given. That first slide you showed, I think I could study that for a week to even get it to it. So I think one of the challenges of this report is trying to how to bring it down to a 3rd grade reading level, and definitely on a 3rd grade math level. because it's just so much information. I am a little concerned still with trying to understand what benchmarks, we're looking at for our vendor wraparound services, as requested by all these schools, as to what data we're collecting from the vendors to demonstrate the impact of the wraparound services. It's one thing for me to have a principal come in and say, this is the golden goose, but then if this was the golden goose, we would be using it every school, and, we'd have a lot of gold. And while we do have a lot of advanced numbers going up in the right direction, which is just phenomenal, any step up is good, but still, I don't, that's what I don't see in this report. I see a lot of numbers, which is great. I see a lot of points attributed to it, but I think we really need to know the benchmarks that were in these contracts, how these vendors demonstrated they had any impact whatsoever on what they did. And, the accountability moving forward, because I think we definitely have to move much stricter in holding vendors accountable. So I know that's more of a statement than a question, but it's just from an initial observation of looking at the numbers. And I think we'll need you to come back. I'll make the recommendation, Mr. Calhoun and Ms. Robertson, to have them come back further as we dig into this, and let us get some time into looking at these numbers. As to your poverty pupil, I think that's a wonderful concept, and I'd like you to show them how that would affect Wando, because I think when you showed me that demonstration, it was kind of unique, because everybody automatically is going to jump to the conclusion that your type of formula was only going to affect Title I schools.
Thank you for that, Mr. Grabowski. You bring up a really good point in regards to the vendors. So on slide 6, and you don't have this deck available. We reviewed it in cabinet this morning for its, again, this is hot off the press. It really took a lot of work over the weekend by a lot of different people to pull it off. But on slide 6, when we share that with you, you'll see there the vendors that are being requested to continue. And those vendors were weighed against the rubric and were either requested directly by a school or a department that linked their work to student outcomes. And we can show you where those vendors ended on the rubric. Now, when you look at slide 6, not all of those programs will make the cut. Again, we haven't made that decision yet in regards to where the cut will be, but not all the vendors even represented on slide 6, which the board continues to talk to us about vendors. Most, if not all, but most vendors that were part of this work were recommended directly by schools. That was the instruction to schools. But slide 6 will overview for you there some of the vendors like Communities and Schools, which are longstanding partners in our work here in Charleston. Some of the summer programs, the high dosage tutoring, I think Mrs. Simmons, maybe Mathnasium. If I just, you see UVA there, leading educators, but again, very few vendors per se even made it through the request process for the impact. So I've noted that, Mr. Grabowski, and we certainly will be conscious of bringing some more detailed information forward to the board as requested. In regards to the pupil in poverty, it really does positively impact. I appreciate you bringing that up. All of our schools that have that might be perceived publicly not to have as much poverty. For example, there are nearly 500 students at Wando, pupils in poverty. If you use a divisor of 5, for example, if you did a 1 to 5 pupil in poverty to student ratio, or to add a piece of enrollment, that would yield you 100 extra students, which in high school terms with a divisor of 20.1 would be 5 extra allocations. So again, we believe all schools would positively be impacted by this new formula. And it's a way that other leading districts across the nation, Boston, districts in Texas have done this work that have yielded positive outcomes for students. So thank you for those 2 points. I've noted them, and we'll make sure to provide whatever clarity we need to around the vendor piece when we talk more to the Board of Trustees.
And as I understand it, one of the more interesting things about your poverty in student program is that it may be a very useful tool in absorbing, and I think it was an estimate number of almost 300 teachers that are currently funded by by Esser.
You're spot on in your understanding of that, Mr. Grabowski. Yes. I think in the model that we threw on the screen, for example, the 1-to-7 model, if we went to that pupil and poverty ratio, it would yield about 135 additional FTEs for our schools. It would be responsive to request for Jermaine Joyner, the principal at St. John's, for example, who says, Anita, I really need to make sure I've got adequate programming here to keep students zoned for St. John's High School at St. John's. It would afford him that opportunity, and it would afford other schools opportunities who need parent advocates who don't have Title I, who need social workers, who need interventionists and coaches. And it would allow the autonomy to be at the schoolhouse. And from my perspective as a leader, that's really where it belongs.
And so in my last question, and it's just trying to draw into understanding where we are with everything that you have just said, and the first slide that you put up on the $5 million right now as an incredible number. That's all covered within this. But and Ms. Carlin, you may have to step in on this one. If we have set aside money for Esser maintenance, this is something that we could look to drawing down onto, because it still leaves quite a balance for us to figure out next year and the year before on the sustainability for 3 years. Am I right?
Yes, sir. That is accurate.
Mr. Grabowski, I'm proud to say that Mrs. Carlin, even though she does not have the anticipated revenue in hand at this time, has thought about this for multi-years out, that if we do this, then we would be looking at this in subsequent years. And so you're again accurate in your assessment of, we have to think about the sustainability of this beyond the FY25 budget.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Duke. All set?
Yep, I'm good.
All right. Ms. Roberson, I know you're not feeling well. Do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Michael.
No questions.
I want to take this in.
It's a lot, Mr. Calhoun. My understanding was that you wanted to see and understand how many requests we've gotten, how that sort of broke down. I mean, we didn't break it down. Well, we have broken it down internally by school. What our departmental requests were, what our programmatic requests were, and then what we're thinking about as far as where we draw that line, because we're going to have to draw that line somewhere, but we're trying to think, as you can see with this weighted student formula, outside of the box about how we're able to maintain student growth.
Yep. Thank you. And I had a question similar to what Mr. Grabowski had about the, last we did the 22 million for Esser stabilization. With any of these formulas that we're looking at right now, will we really fall within that same line of the 22 million?
Yes, and I can talk about that more when I go over the multi-year of how we factor that in.
Right.
I cannot take all the credit. This was a group effort by several people in my office, as well as Mr. Kennedy. So it was a lot of work, but I think it's a very good early preliminary multi-year.
Right, and I think that moves us right into the multi-year summary. So I think let's go to move forward. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Happy to provide. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you, Ms. Carlin. Thank you. So I printed out copies for people that are here on the 8.5 by 14 paper. I know it's a lot of information to look at on a screen. But just to go over the landscape of the document, what we'll do is as we update this, we'll date it so that we can just keep up with all the different changes. And just going over the landscape of the document. The first section we'll discuss revenues, and then the next section we'll talk about projected expenditures. And then we even took it a step further and talked about what this would look like as far as fund balance and what the estimated fund balance looks like for years out. So the second column we've listed here are the actual fiscal year 2020 revenues and expenditures. This comes straight from our financial audit. Same with the next column for actual 2021, actual 2022, and then the next column, actual 2023. Something that we did differently on this particular multi-year is we only took a 3-year average of fiscal year 21 through 23. And the reason that we did that is because if you recall in fiscal year 2020, that's when we were dealing with COVID. And so when you look at the expenditures as a whole for fiscal year 2020, it's about $515.7 million, so which is significantly low when you look at 18, 19. So even though we didn't take the column out of the multi-year, it is not part of the average that's in the blue columns. The blue columns actually help us determine if we're on schedule for the multi-year, or if our calculations look correctly. And you'll notice in we took not only the average dollar change, but we also took the average annual percentage change. And you'll see some fluctuations, which I can explain those further. The next column over is our fiscal year 2024 budget. And I know those numbers are familiar to everyone because we've been doing the financial updates periodically. And then the next column over in yellow, this is what we are projecting at year end. And I can go into that more on the December financial update. But I feel like we need to go ahead and just move forward with the multi-year numbers. So for projected 2025, we are assuming for 25 a 10.4 mill increase. And this is in order to assist with the sustainability of not only academic gains, but to support the continuous plan for student success. Also configured in that is a 3% annual increase on the property assessment values. So we're projecting for fiscal year 25 a total projected revenue of $780.9 million. On the state side, we projected a 3.81% increase. As you know, we do not have house projections at this point. So we're basing that based upon what we've seen historically. That number could increase, it could decrease. We just don't know yet. There's a lot of conflicting information coming out right now. So we've just decided to go with a 3.8 increase for state revenues. So on projected expenditures, what we've assumed right now, based upon just what we're hearing, is teacher salaries to do a step plus a $2,500 increase. There again, we're getting some conflicting information from not only the governor's budget, but the State Department of Education's budget. So we're not sure what that's going to look like on our state funding. But that's what we've assumed just based upon what we know right now. I must indicate that these numbers do not include any overlays that we have at this time. Sometimes a school has a special need and will provide overlays to provide the principals additional support for student success. Those numbers are not in here right now at this point. As far as non-teacher salaries, we assumed a step and a 2% COLA. We're not saying that's what we recommend. That's just an assumption based on what we've done historically, just to kind of give you an idea of where revenues versus expenditures are. As far as purchase services and supplies, what is not included right now is contractual obligation increases that we know are going to occur. Staff is currently working on that. So what we did for fiscal year 25 is just a flat 8% increase. And that's based on things that we could see clearly we're going to increase, whether that's utilities, water, sewer, substitute coverage, things like that. And then for supplies, same thing. We did a 3.5% increase for fiscal year 2025 based upon what we could see historically. So overall, we projected revenues are approximately 780.9 million. And projected expenditures, we assumed 769.3 million. Now, when you look towards the bottom, you'll see we've got the total projected expenditures as well as use of fund balance. We're not projecting to use fund balance at this point for fiscal year 25. And I just realized I skipped over something very important when I was discussing expenditures. I need to go back to where there's a new line item called total Esser Sustainability Plan. And you'll notice for fiscal year 2025, we've assumed a $12.9 million increase or amount for this plan. And that covers some of the stuff that Ms. Huggins was talking about earlier. Not the full price, but just to kind of drop something in there now based upon what we are seeing, what we are assuming. It's not a final number. And so when we go back down and look at projected expenditures versus projected revenues, we're going to see an increase of $11.6 million. And what that means is we're going to bring in more revenues than expenditures. Something else that we wanted to notate is, we continuously see where we're not spending all of our money that we're budgeting. And we also see that we're consistently bringing in more revenues that we're budgeting. And so we conservatively input an $8 million line item and called it an adjustment based on a historical analysis. Just to be transparent that we know that we could bring in an additional $8 million. And so when you factor that in with the amount over, with the amount of revenues over expenditures, we're looking to possibly add $19.6 million to possibly fund balance or to use that towards this new funding formula that we're looking at. So we went a step further and wanted to show that even though the total projected fund balance, it could approximately be $214.3 million. The estimated required fund balance based upon our fund balance policy, the required balance would be $169.2 million. So we're to the good about $45 million adding to fund balance. And so when you go over to fiscal year 26, our projections for revenues are a little bit flat because we are not projecting a millage increase in fiscal year 26. All we're projecting is a 3% growth on the assessments. And we are continuing to budget 3.5% for state revenues. So the projected revenue is $798.3 million, which is about a 2.2% increase from fiscal year 25 based upon what we know right now. And then on the expenditure side, we assumed a teacher salary increase plus a step with a 2% cost of living adjustment. That's approximately 3.76%. We're not saying that that's what we recommend. It's just a placeholder so that we can put something in there related to teacher salaries as well as non-teacher salaries. And so that would be the same for non-teacher salaries, a step plus a 2% COLA, which is equivalent to 3.76%. We've taken into consideration the benefits, and we've increased purchase services by about 4.6% and increased supplies by about 3.6%, as well as the other line items below. So under the Esser Sustainability Plan, we only factored in or assumed a $6.5 million increase for 26. So total projected expenditures are approximately a little over $800 million. So the way the numbers are working right now, we will need to use about $1.7 million in fund balance to make revenues and expenditures match. We take in consideration, again, the adjustment that's based on the historical analysis, which is approximately $8 million. And so even though the total projected fund balances could be approximately $221 million, the required fund balance based upon these early projections is approximately $177 million. And so going over to fiscal year 2027, this is where we see we're assuming a millage increase of 3.3 mils, and that's also taking into consideration the 3% growth on the assessments. and then factoring in state revenues at approximately 3.5%. So total projected revenues are approximately $816 million, which is a 2% increase from fiscal year 26. There again, salaries and benefits where we just assumed a step and a 2% COLA for teachers as well as non-teachers, and assumed the same percentage increase for purchase services and supplies and the other items. For the sustainability plan, we assumed or factored in a $6.5 million dollar amount for that. And so total projected expenditures are approximately $838.6 million. As you can tell, our expenditures do exceed our revenues for fiscal year 27. And so we're looking to use approximately $22.8 million in fund balance known as Esser Sustainability in order to balance this budget. Taking into consideration the additional $8 million based on the historical analysis, that number could drop down from $22.7 million needing fund balance to about $14.3 million of fund balance needed. Total projected fund balance, approximately $206.7 million, but the required fund balance is approximately $182.3 million. And so this is where we are right now. It's just a very early preliminary projection based upon some assumptions that we've talked about in-house and with cabinet. This is not a final. This is going to continue to change as we get more information, not only from staff, but from cabinet, as well as from house projections and things like that.
Thank you. That's everything we asked for. Let's start with Mr. Grabowski.
I don't have the benefit of the spreadsheet, so I'm going to hold off. I'd like to listen to some of the other questions first. If you could come back to me.
All right, great, Mr. Duke. We lost. All right. He just said he's at the run, so yeah, he's hopping off now.
I just had one question. The 3% increase in property values, is that a historic run rate or?
Well, yes and no. So that is a rate that normally the county auditor's office is comfortable with us when we start projecting, budgets out. It actually exceeds that, which we have tried to incorporate that in our revenue numbers that I didn't talk about. But yes, that it is typical to do the 3%, but we are definitely seeing a much higher percentage.
Got it. I just was curious, just with all the uncertainty out there. I don't think we're going to have any issues in Charleston County. Still, something maybe to plan for worst case scenario on top of that, but it sounds like a pretty conservative assumption right now.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Cool. And right now with this projected 2025 was with a 10.4 mil increase. I'm good.
You good?
Okay. Yeah, I'm good. I'll take this in and I'll have my questions at the COP. Thank you. Do we have any further questions, Mr. Grosky?
No, I agree with you, Mr. Calhoun. I'd like to get a hold of the sheet and hold back on some of my questions to Cal.
Mm-hmm. Right, because at this point we're looking at 19.6 million. All right, cool. Thank you, Ms. Carlin. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and I believe we move forward. We have no further questions. We're going to move forward to the monthly financial report for December 2023, Ms. Carlin.
Yes, thank you, sir. So you'll notice that this report looks a little different than the prior monthly financial updates. This is the first update where we are projecting through June 30th. Mm-hmm. The first column includes all revenues and expenditures received through December 31st. Total revenues received to date are approximately $188.4 million. And total expenditures to date are approximately $278.5 million. Going back up to the very first line under revenues where it says total revenue from local sources, we are just now starting to receive the majority of our property taxes on real property. And so you'll continue to see that number increase significantly over the next couple months. So the next column is estimated through June. We are, at this point, we are already seeing that we're going to bring in approximately $17 million more in local revenue than we originally budgeted, and that's twofold. The first, of course, is the local tax revenues. We're already seeing a significant difference in not only the tax assessments that we use to create the fiscal year 24 budget, but the most revised tax assessments that we received back in September. And so that is approximately $13 million more than what we budgeted for. Another item that we're seeing is interest earned. We continue to have really good interest rates on our bank accounts, our checking accounts. And we're currently seeing about $280,000 per month just in interest earned because we're carrying some pretty significant balances in our local government pool as well as our general operating account. And so that is good news. On the expenditure side, we have spent to date $278.5 million. We are estimating through the end of June approximately to spend $432.7 million. Two things I'd like to point out is salaries and benefits. At this point, based upon vacancies, it looks like we're going to be about $10.8 million under budget. That number will fluctuate, between now and June, but that's what we're seeing right now. Purchase services, it does appear that based upon what we're seeing right now, if we spend everything in purchase services that has been budgeted for, we are also seeing an increase of about $2.7 million, which is mostly due to substitute services due to long-term vacancies and sped vacancies. So whenever you have a lot of vacancies and you have savings in salaries and benefits, you are going to normally see an increase in substitute services because we can't fill those positions. And so just wanted to explain that. Supplies, we're projecting that we're going to spend the full amount that we budgeted. Sometimes that does not happen. But at this point, we're just not sure. We don't want to reduce anything at this point. Same thing with capital outlay. We're projecting that we're going to spend exactly what was budgeted for. Same with total objects. Total transfers. So this is where these are our charter school and meeting street payments. And right now, based upon the 45-day enrollment increase, as well as a couple other things, we're seeing that we're probably going to be over budget in this account by about $3 million. One of the things that really took us by surprise is the weighted pupil unit increased by about 16%. That number is provided to us by the State Department of Education. And unfortunately, we did not factor in that type of increase when we were working on the charter school budgets. And so that could also play into their final 135-day ADM as well. But we will keep an eye on that and keep the board and Audit and Finance Committee as well as the board up to date on that. And total reserves, a good thing. We had budgeted $725,000 that we had budgeted for to use for 10-day or 15-day enrollment. And it doesn't look like we're going to need that full amount. So more than likely, it's going to roll back into fund balance. Same thing with use of fund balance. In order to balance the budget, we projected to use approximately $14.4 million. And looking at the way revenues are coming in and the way that we're going to have some savings with vacancies, I don't foresee that we're going to need that full $14.4 million. So that's going to roll back into fund balance. And so right now it looks like projected total surplus just for through year end is going to be about $8.5 million. And so when you take that in consideration and then not needing the $14.4 million, we are looking at a projected increase to fund balance of approximately $12 million. And that concludes the December financial update.
Cool, thank you. Mr. Grabowski.
Yes, Ms. Carlin, I think the challenge is we've got a 2-hour workshop coming up right before Cal. And so it's going to be trying to put this into, once again, the simplest methods for people that are not used to hearing this on a monthly basis. Like Mr. Calhoun and I have had the pleasure over the last 2 years. It really is a challenge, but I guess it goes back to, we've already put in a millage increase yet this year we're coming out with a potential surplus, looking into next year. And I really think, it comes into explaining to people, the deficit hole and where it's coming from versus why we have a surplus this year.
Mhm. Yes, sir. Good point.
I have no further questions, Mr. Khan.
Cool. Thank you.
I have no questions.
Right. I have no questions, but almost in line with what Mr. Grabowski was just saying. Yeah, I know we asked the same question last year, but do you think we are too conservative within our projections each year? And should we kind of push it a little bit more?
Yes, I do. And so one of the things we did in the multi-years, we tried to factor that in with revenues as well as expenditures. But at the same time, not harm the district overall as a business.
Right.
And so for example, we were a little more aggressive with the local tax revenues than usual. Because we could see year after year, we're bringing in more than what we're budgeting because of the timing of the assessments that we're using.
Right.
And so, as well as, supplies, we can see that we're not always using or spending 100% of what we've budgeted. And, but rather than ask for a significant cut, we just we backed off of that on the multi-year.
Right.
So.
Right. And we just got $85,000 worth of supplies from the Navy, so we can use that.
Right. Yes, sir. Good job.
CDs and DVDs. All right, cool. I think that's all I have for now. Now I'll come back at Kyle and finish off. Thank you. That is all we have. Do we have anything further for the good of the order? Hearing none, we will send all of our action items over to board, as well as the Esser update, the budget update, and the monthly financial report. All right. Our next meeting will be, excuse me, March 5th, 2024, and I will look forward to seeing you all then.